Nathan Price was 38 years old, and for 3 years after his wife walked out, he kept doing what he believed a decent man does. Every month, without fail, $200 left his account. Money he didn't have to spare, money that killed the business expansion he'd been building toward, money he sent because Adrienne told him her mother was dying, and he refused to let that be his fault. He skipped vacations. He drove the same worn-out van. He told himself that's what integrity looks like when it costs you something. Then one Tuesday evening, a piece of forwarded mail landed in his hands, a collections notice addressed to a woman named Gloria Walsh. Nathan made a single phone call to sort out what he assumed was a billing error. The representative confirmed the account. Then she confirmed the date of death. Gloria Walsh had been dead for 3 years, 4 months before Adrienne told him she was getting worse, 8 months before the first payment request ever arrived. Nathan sat in his truck in a hardware store parking lot, doing the math on $43,000 he had sent to a ghost. And in that moment, he made a decision that Adrienne never saw coming. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The autumn chill bit through Nathan Price's work jacket as he sat in his idling truck, the dashboard clock reading 6:15 a.m. in pale green numbers. Steam rose from the battered thermos cup wedged in his center console, filling the cab with the scent of black coffee. His phone screen glowed in the pre-dawn darkness as he watched the familiar transaction process. $200 transferred automatically to Adrienne's account, same as it had been every month for the past 3 years. He took a slow sip of coffee, barely registering the mild burn on his tongue. The payment cleared with a soft chime, and the updated balance stared back at him. It wasn't a devastating hit anymore. He'd adjusted his business and personal finances around this monthly obligation, but it was still enough to keep his dreams of expansion just out of reach. The text thread with Jerome lit up his phone. "You at the Decatur job yet? Got that supplier meeting at 9. Just pulled up," Nathan typed back. "I'll be done by 8:30. Better be. And man, it's that day again, isn't it?" Nathan didn't need to ask what Jerome meant. His friend had watched him make these payments since Adrienne left, had seen him pass up opportunities to grow their business because the medical bills for Gloria, Adrienne's mother, ate up so much of their potential operating capital. "It's handled," Nathan replied simply. He could almost hear Jerome's frustrated sigh through the phone. Their last conversation about it still echoed in his mind. "You're letting her hold you back, brother. 3 years of this? Something ain't right." But Nathan had made his peace with it. When Adrienne left him for Brett Holloway, regional sales director with his fancy car and country club membership, she'd at least been honest about why. She was tired of waiting for someday, tired of watching other couples their age take vacations and buy houses in better neighborhoods. Brett could give her the life she wanted now, not years down the road. The only thing she'd asked was that Nathan keep helping with her mother's medical expense. Gloria's condition was deteriorating, the treatments getting more expensive. Nathan had agreed without hesitation. Not because he owed Adrienne anything, but because it was the right thing to do. A man stands by his obligations. Paula, his sister, had a different take. "You need to verify these bills," she'd said last month over dinner. "Ask for documentation, something, anything." "That's not who I am," he'd told her. "I gave my word." "And she broke hers," Paula had shot back. "Or did you forget the vows she made before she moved in with Brett?" Nathan shifted in his seat now, watching the sky lighten over the Decatur strip mall where today's job waited. The property manager needed 3 units serviced before the stores opened. Simple work. The kind of steady business that kept his company alive, but not growing. He thought about the commercial van he should have bought last year, the residential contract he'd passed on because he couldn't afford to hire another technician, the savings account that stayed stubbornly thin despite working 6 days a week. But then he thought about Gloria, fighting her illness in that Birmingham hospital. He'd always liked her, even if she'd sometimes hinted that Adrienne could have done better than an HVAC contractor. She didn't deserve to suffer just because her daughter had made choices that hurt him. His coffee had cooled to lukewarm. Nathan drained the last of it and grabbed his tool belt from the passenger seat. The weight of it was familiar, grounding. This was what he knew. Honest work. Done well. One job at a time. Maybe it wasn't the fast track to success that Brett Holloway rode, but it was his path. The morning air hit him as he stepped out of the truck, tools jingling at his hip. He could see the units he needed to service from here, their shapes dark against the lightening sky. Simple work. Good work. The kind that kept him moving forward, even if the pace was slower than he'd once hoped. He locked his truck, pocketing his phone and the keys. Time to focus on what was in front of him. The payment was made, his obligation met for another month. That's what a decent man did. He kept his word, even when it cost him something. Even when others thought he was foolish for doing it. Nathan's key scraped in the lock of his front door just after 7 that evening. The day's jobs had gone smoothly enough. 3 units serviced before 9, 2 emergency calls handled by mid-afternoon, and a quick consultation with a restaurant owner about upgrading their system. Normal Tuesday. His shoulders ached from crawling through a tight maintenance space, but it was the good kind of tired that came from honest work. A small pile of mail waited on the floor beneath the mail slot. Bills, mostly. A flyer for pizza delivery. And at the bottom, a wrinkled envelope that had clearly been forwarded more than once, the yellow forwarding sticker partially peeled at one corner. He picked it up, frowning at the return address. Medical Collections Bureau of Alabama. The original address was for an apartment complex in Birmingham, Gloria's old place, before she'd moved into what Adrienne said was a better facility for her treatments. His name was visible through the envelope's window, probably because he'd been listed as a secondary contact back when things were good, when he and Adrienne were still building their life together. Nathan dropped his lunch cooler on the kitchen counter and sat heavily in one of the wooden chairs at his small dining table. The envelope felt thin between his fingers as he opened it, probably just some bureaucratic loose end that needed tying up. He'd gotten good at handling medical billing tangles over the past 3 years. The letter inside was standard collections language, an outstanding balance of $840 from 3 years ago. What caught his eye was the account status notation at the bottom. Patient deceased. Account closed. Something cold settled in his stomach. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number in the letterhead, half expecting to get an automated system at this hour. Instead, a tired but professional woman answered on the 3rd ring. Medical Collections Bureau. This is Karen. How can I help you? Yes, hi. I'm calling about a notice I received. Account number. He squinted at the paper. BR77298844. Let me pull that up for you. Keys clicked in the background. And can I get your name and relationship to the account? Nathan Price. I was listed as a secondary billing contact. It's for Gloria Walsh. More typing. Yes, I see you here on the account. What can I help you with? There seems to be some confusion about the account status. The letter shows it as closed due to... He paused. Due to patient deceased. That's correct. Let me verify the date for you. Mrs. Walsh passed away on September 12th, 3 years ago. The outstanding balance is from her final admission. Would you like to settle the account today? Nathan's hand tightened on his phone. September 12th. 4 months before Adrienne had told him her mother's condition was getting worse. 8 months before the first request for help with medical bills. Sir? Are you still there? Yes. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. Can you tell me what facility this bill is from? She named a hospital in Birmingham. Not the treatment center Adrienne had described in dozens of emails over the years. Not the place she said was doing wonders for her mother's recovery. Thank you, he said automatically. I'll need to review some documents before settling the balance. He ended the call and sat perfectly still at his kitchen table. The evening light through his windows had taken on a strange quality, like everything was slightly out of focus. September 12th. 3 years ago. 36 monthly payments of $1,200 each. $43,200 total. The drive to his shop took 12 minutes. He didn't remember making a conscious decision to go, but here he was, unlocking the office door, pulling the accordion file from his bottom desk drawer. Every receipt Adrian had emailed him, every update about Gloria's treatment, every grateful message about how the money was helping. He spread them across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. The timestamps told their own story now. Detailed updates about Gloria's progress dated months after her death. Receipts from facilities she'd never seen. References to treatments that had never happened. All carefully crafted, spaced out naturally, written in Adrian's warm, familiar tone. Nathan stood over his desk, hands planted on either side of the paper trail, and saw with perfect clarity what he'd been too loyal to see before. Adrian had never counted on his suspicion because she'd never had to. She had built their entire marriage on the bedrock of his decency. She had known exactly how far his loyalty would stretch, exactly what story would keep him paying, exactly what tone would keep him from asking questions. She had weaponized everything good about him, turned it into a tool to bleed him slowly, and trusted that his own character would keep him from looking too closely at the wound. Nathan waited until 8 a.m. sharp to call Paula. His sister always started her workday early, and he knew she'd be at her desk already, coffee in hand, checking emails before her first meeting. "Well, this is different," Paula answered. "You usually wait till Sunday to check in." "I need to tell you something." Nathan's voice was steady, controlled. "And I need you to just listen first." There was a slight pause on the line. "Go ahead." He laid it out chronologically. The forwarded collections notice, the phone call, the timestamp on Gloria's death certificate, the 36 months of payments that followed. He didn't elaborate on the betrayal. He didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. Paula was silent for several long seconds after he finished. When she spoke, her voice was thick with controlled anger. "Nathan, I knew something wasn't right. I told you. I know you did. 3 years, $43,000. Yeah." Paula took a deep breath. Nathan could picture her at her desk, straightening papers she didn't need to straighten, processing. "You're different this morning," she said finally. "This isn't you falling apart. This is you already decided about something. Everything," Nathan said quietly. "But right, what do you need from me?" "Just this. Just someone who won't tell me to calm down or wait or think about it more. I've done enough waiting." "You have your sister," Paula said simply. "What's the first move?" "Already made it. Calling Jerome next, then my attorney. I need everything documented before I do anything else." "Smart. And Adrian doesn't know you know?" "Not yet. Keep it that way. Build your case first." Paula paused. "Nathan, I'm so sorry. Not just about the money. About what she did to your trust." "Yeah." Nathan's voice remained level. "I'll call you tonight." Jerome's reaction was exactly what Nathan needed. Pure, unconstrained outrage. Nathan put him on speaker while he drove to his first job, letting his friend's anger fill the truck cab. "She did what? Nate? I swear to God, I'm about to—" "You're not about to do anything." Nathan cut in calmly. "We're going to handle this right." "Right? Brother, there is no right way to handle someone stealing 40 grand from you with a dead woman's medical bills. There is, and I'm going to find it." Nathan turned into the parking lot of his first service call. "But first, I need you to run the shop today. I've got an appointment with Carla Bridges at 11. Jerome's tone shifted slightly. "The contract attorney?" Yeah, that's good. You want me to pull any paperwork? Just keep things moving today. I'll fill you in tonight." The morning job passed in a blur of mechanical routine. Check connections, test pressure, replace filter. Nathan's hands knew what to do without much input from his mind, which was already building the case he'd present to Carla. At 11 sharp, he sat across from Carla Bridges in her Midtown office, a stack of printed emails and bank statements between them. She read through them methodically, occasionally making notes, her expression unchanging. "This is clearly fraud," she said finally. "Civil, definitely. Wire fraud, potentially. Depending on jurisdiction since the transfers crossed state lines. The fact that the divorce was never finalized actually works in our favor. It gives us additional angles for asset recovery. What's my first step? Stop the transfers immediately. Document everything. And Nathan?" She fixed him with a direct look. "Don't tip your hand. The moment she knows you're aware, things get more complicated." Nathan nodded slowly. "I understand." That evening, he sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open to his banking app. The scheduled transfer for next month's medical bills was due to process in 3 days. He could cancel it now, start the process of closing all those bleeding wounds Adrienne had opened. Instead, he let his finger hover over the confirm button for a long moment, then pressed it. One last payment. $200, same as always. Let her think everything was still running according to her plan. Let her feel secure in the story she'd built. He closed the laptop and looked at the thick folder of documentation beside it. Everything was there. Every email, every transfer record, every carefully crafted lie. 3 years of fraud, compiled and organized, ready to become something more than just paper. Nathan picked up his phone, typed a reminder note to himself. Do not let Adrienne know what you know. Not yet. The yet wasn't a threat. It wasn't even anger, really. It was simply a marker for the moment when everything would change. Not on Adrienne's timeline anymore, but on his. 2 days after meeting with Carla, Nathan sat across from Marcus Chen, the civil investigator she'd recommended. They met in a small conference room at Carla's office, the space feeling almost too formal for what was essentially a planning session. "Standard procedure in fraud cases," Marcus explained, spreading out his initial paperwork. "We document everything independently, establish patterns, look for additional exposure. Sometimes, what looks like a single straight line turns out to be part of a bigger picture." Nathan nodded, sliding across his folder of records. "Everything's dated and organized." Marcus spent 20 minutes reviewing the document, occasionally making notes. "This is thorough," he said finally. "Makes my job easier. I'll need about a week to run everything down properly." It took less than that. 5 days later, Nathan's phone rang while he was finishing up a repair job in Buckhead. "We need to meet," Marcus said without preamble. "I found something you should see." An hour later, Nathan sat in the same conference room, looking at a new set of documents spread across the table. Bank records, transfer patterns, timestamps that told a story he hadn't expected. "She's been running a similar operation with Brett Holloway," Marcus explained, pointing to highlighted transfers. "Different approach. He has more money, different pressure points, but the same basic framework. Systematic extraction under constructed pretenses." Nathan studied the numbers. "How long?" "That's where it gets interesting." Marcus pulled out a timeline he'd assembled. "Their relationship didn't start when you thought it did. According to these records, financial entanglement began while you and Adrienne were still living together. Brett Holloway knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't some guy who got involved with a separated woman. He pursued your wife while she was still at home with you." Nathan felt something cold settle in his chest. Not pain. He was past that. This was different. This was clarity. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Brett Holloway is married. Technically still is. His wife, Diane, lives in Marietta. They're separated but no divorce filed yet. She might be useful to know about." Nathan looked at the address Marcus had written down. "She knows?" "She suspects something. She's got partial records but not the full picture. not what you have. Marcus leaned back. Look, I'm just here to document. But if I were building a case, having two sets of records showing the same pattern would be stronger than one. Nathan took the address, folded it carefully, and put it in his wallet. Anything else? Yeah. One detail that matters. Brett Holloway's not just some guy with money. He's regional sales director for a major commercial real estate firm. He has access, connections, the kind of man who'd know exactly what he was risking when he went after a married woman. He made that choice with full information. Nathan drove straight from the meeting to a diner just off I-285. He called the number Marcus had provided for Diane Holloway from the parking lot. Mrs. Holloway? My name is Nathan Price. We need to talk about Brett and Adrian. There was a long pause on the line. When and where? I'm at the Marietta Diner now, if you're free. 20 minutes. Diane Holloway was tall, composed, and unsurprised by anything Nathan told her. She sat across from him in a corner booth, coffee untouched, reviewing his documentation with practiced eyes. I knew there were transfers I couldn't account for, she said finally. I had bits and pieces, but not enough to build anything solid. She looked up at Nathan. You have timestamps, dates, actual proof of when it started. Yes? And you're willing to share that information? I am. Nathan kept his voice level. Not out of kindness, not out of anger, but because what they did was calculated, and the response should be too. Diane nodded slowly. I have records of joint accounts, investment holdings, patterns of withdrawal that never made sense. Would those be useful to your attorney? Very. They spent 30 minutes exchanging information, each taking careful notes. No emotion, no venting, no shared grief. Just two people building something precise. On the drive home, Nathan finally let himself absorb the full shape of what had been done to him. Not just Adrienne's fraud. That was almost simple in comparison, but the deliberate, coordinated deception. Brett Holloway, a man who had looked him in the eye at business functions while already pursuing his wife. The calculated nature of it all. He pulled into his driveway as the sun was setting, the folder of new documentation on the seat beside him. The shape of it was clear now, and so was what needed to happen next. Nathan's phone buzzed while he was finishing paperwork at his shop. Paula's text was brief. Come by tonight. Need to show you something. He arrived at Paula's house just after 7. The summer sun still high in the Atlanta sky. She met him at the door with an expression he recognized, the same look she'd worn 3 years ago when she first tried to warn him about Adrienne. Kitchen, she said, leading him through the house. You need to sit down for this. Paula's kitchen was warm and familiar, the place where their family gathered for every holiday. Tonight it felt different. She had papers spread across the counter, notes in her precise handwriting. Remember Caroline Mitchell? Paula asked, pulling out a stool for him. She still runs in those Buckhead circles, the ones Adrian cultivated. Nathan nodded. Caroline had been at their wedding. She reached out to me yesterday. She's been hearing things, watching things, started putting pieces together. Paula slid a document across the counter. This is public record. Partnership filing from 2 years ago. Look at the names. Nathan studied the paper. It was a real estate investment partnership, something called Meridian Holdings, LLC. 3 partners listed. One name jumped out. Adrian Walsh. Keep reading, Paula said quietly. The initial investment amounts were listed. Adrian's contribution, $20,000. The date was exactly 2 years ago, right in the middle of the monthly payments Nathan had been making. There's more, Paula continued, spreading out additional documents. Caroline's husband works in commercial real estate. He's seen the quarterly reports. The partnership has 2 properties now, both generating steady returns. They're building something real. Nathan felt the weight of it settle in his chest. Not pain. He was past that. This was different. This was understanding. She wasn't just taking money for bills, he said slowly. She was investing, building, using your money, Paula confirmed. The money she got by making you believe her mother needed care. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't surviving. She was building a future using your guilt as capital. Nathan stood up, walked to Paula's window. The neighbor's kids were playing basketball in the driveway next door. Normal life happening in normal ways. You know what this means, Paula said behind him. She didn't leave because she was unhappy. She left because you were more valuable to her as a guilty ex-husband than as a spouse she had to maintain a marriage with. Nathan turned back to the counter, studied the documents again. The clinical precision of it all, the timing of the investment, the way it aligned with the payment schedule she'd set up. Every piece calculated. "I need to call Carla," he said finally. Paula nodded. "Use my office." In Paula's quiet home office, Nathan laid out the new information for his attorney. Carla was direct as always. "This changes the scope," she said. "We can trace your payments directly into an investment vehicle. That's not just fraud. That's calculable returns we can pursue. I'll update the complaint." After hanging up with Carla, Nathan sat in Paula's office chair for a long moment. Then he did something deliberate. He called Adrienne. She answered on the second ring. "Nathan, is everything okay?" He kept his voice light, casual. "Yeah, just some paperwork I need to sort out. Been meaning to call." "Oh," her voice warmed immediately. "Of course, whatever you need. You know I'm always here to help." The practiced concern in her tone would have moved him once. Now he heard it clearly. The performance of care, the management of his responses. "Great," he said. "I'll have everything together in about 3 weeks. That work for you?" "Perfect timing, actually. I'll be in town then." They exchanged a few more pleasantries. She asked about his mother. He gave brief, polite responses. When they hung up, he looked at the calendar on Paula's office wall. 3 weeks. That's how long Adrienne had left, before everything she'd built on his loyalty came apart. He marked the date in his phone, not as a reminder, but as a deadline. Paula appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" Nathan nodded, pocketing his phone. "I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am." Nathan arrived at Carla's office early the next morning, a thick folder under his arm containing every document they'd gathered. The morning light filtered through the high-rise windows, casting long shadows across the conference room table where they sat. "Walk me through it one more time," Nathan said, spreading the papers methodically. Carla nodded, her reading glasses perched precisely on her nose. The civil complaint focuses on 3 years of documented fraud. 36 monthly transfers of $200 each, totaling $43,200. We have Gloria Walsh's death certificate, dated 4 months before Adrienne began requesting payments. We have every email she sent you referencing specific medical procedures, facilities, and treatments, all fabricated. She tapped a stack of printed emails. The documentation is exceptional. She created a detailed fiction and maintained it consistently. That works against her now. Every specific detail she invented becomes evidence of premeditation. "And the divorce angle?" Nathan asked. "The unfinalized divorce gives us leverage. You've been separated but not divorced, meaning we can pursue joint assets that were never formally divided. More importantly, we can establish that she used marital funds, your payments, to seed that real estate investment. We'll claim a percentage of both the initial investment and subsequent returns." Nathan nodded slowly. "File it today." Carla began preparing the documents for submission, while Nathan made his next move. He called Diane Holloway and arranged to meet her at the same diner where they'd first talked. Diane was already there when he arrived, composed as always. He handed her a single manila envelope. "What you asked for," he said. "Email correspondence, phone records, credit card statements. They establish that Brett and Adrienne's relationship began while both of our marriages were intact. The timeline is precise." Diane studied the documents carefully. "This is exactly what my attorney needs to pursue dissipation claims. Brett spent significant marital assets during the affair period. Use it however you need to, Nathan said. I'm giving you this information once, cleanly. What happens next is your business. Diane looked at him with quiet understanding. Thank you. His next stop was his Aunt Ruby's house. Ruby and his Aunt Marie were waiting for him in Ruby's living room. These were the women who'd welcomed Adrienne into the family, who'd treated her like a daughter. I need to tell you something, Nathan said, sitting down. I need you to hear it directly from me. He laid out the facts without emotion. Gloria's death date, the fraudulent payment requests, the fabricated medical updates, the real estate investment built with his money. Ruby closed her eyes. Marie reached for her sister's hand. We vouched for her, Marie said quietly. You didn't know, Nathan replied. None of us did. He left them to process it, knowing the truth would spread naturally through the family networks Adrienne had once carefully cultivated. Not as gossip, but as fact. His final stop was the shop, where Jerome was waiting with the expansion paperwork spread across his desk. 2 new vans, Jerome said, pointing to the purchase orders. Full maintenance contract with Highland Properties for their residential complexes. Marketing budget for the new branding. Everything we've been putting off for 3 years. Nathan picked up a pen. Let's build what we should have been building all along. You sure about the timing? Jerome asked. Doing this the same day as the legal filing? I'm sure, Nathan said. She thought keeping me financially strangled would keep me small. Time to prove that calculation wrong. He signed the commercial expansion contracts with steady hands, while across town, Carla was submitting the civil complaint to the court. One chapter ending, another beginning, both happening in the same afternoon. Jerome grinned as Nathan dated the final signature. Want to go look at the new vans? They're ready for pickup. Let's do it, Nathan said, standing up. The weight of the last 3 years felt lighter with each step toward the future he'd delayed for too long. The streetlights of Buckhead cast long shadows across Nathan's truck as he drove down West Pace's Ferry Road. Modern mansions and manicured lawns rolled past his window, each house more imposing than the last. He knew their house number by heart, 3542, but didn't slow down when he passed it. The lights were on inside, warm squares of yellow in the growing darkness, but he kept his eyes on the road ahead. The neighborhood's wealth had always made him uncomfortable, even when Adrienne used to drag him to parties here. She'd walk into those houses like she belonged, while he'd count the hours until they could leave. Now he understood why she'd been so at home. She'd been auditioning for her future role, measuring the spaces she planned to fill. Nathan turned onto Peachtree and hit the Bluetooth button on his steering wheel. Jerome picked up on the second ring. You see the email from Highland Properties? Jerome asked without preamble. They want to add their new development in Decatur to the maintenance contract. Just read it, Nathan said, switching lanes. That's another 60 units. Already running the numbers. We'll need to adjust the staff scheduling, maybe bring on another tech sooner than we planned. But the margins look good. Nathan felt the familiar satisfaction of solving a practical problem. Let's look at the applicants from last month again. There was that guy from Johnson Technical College. Good references, clean record. Marcus. Yeah, I liked him. Want me to set up a second interview? They spent the next 15 minutes deep in the logistics of expansion. Van routes, supply orders, training schedules. It was the kind of conversation they should have been having 3 years ago, but Nathan didn't let himself dwell on that. He was too busy thinking about tomorrow. The familiar streets of his East Atlanta neighborhood appeared as he turned off the main road. Small craftsman houses lined the street, their front porches lit against the evening dark. His neighbor Mrs. Chen was watering her flowers despite the late hour. She waved as he pulled into his driveway. Nathan sat in his truck for a moment after cutting the engine, realizing he hadn't thought about Adrienne once during his entire conversation with Jerome. 20 solid minutes of planning the future instead of carrying the past. It felt like putting down a heavy weight he'd gotten used to holding. Inside, he went through his evening routine. changed out of his work clothes, started the rice cooker, checked the weather forecast for tomorrow's jobs. Normal things on what should have felt like anything but a normal night. His phone buzzed on the counter while he was washing dishes. Nathan dried his hands before picking it up, already knowing who it would be. Adrienne's text glowed on the screen. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay?" Nathan could read every layer of meaning under those casual words. She was probing, trying to gauge what he knew. Someone in their old social circle must have mentioned his questions, his conversations with family. Adrienne had always been good at monitoring the currents of information around her. It was one of the skills that had kept her fraud hidden for so long. He studied the message, noting how perfectly calibrated it was, concerned but not pressing, personal but not intimate. The kind of text that invited confession, that made the recipient want to explain themselves. Classic Adrienne. 3 years ago, he would have responded immediately, would have felt guilty for making her worry. Now he simply set the phone face down on the counter and finished washing the dishes. Everything that needed doing was done. The civil complaint was filed, sitting in the court system like a time bomb. Diane Holloway had the documentation she needed to collapse Brett's divorce position. The family network was shifting, the truth spreading through quiet conversations in living rooms and over phone lines. Even the business was moving forward, breaking free of the artificial constraints Adrienne's scheme had placed on it. Nathan dried the last plate and put it away. He turned off the kitchen lights and walked through his quiet house, checking the locks, adjusting the thermostat. Tomorrow would bring its own developments, but tonight was for rest. In his bedroom, he changed into sleep clothes and sat on the edge of his bed. His phone screen lit up again. Another text from Adrienne. This one a little less casual. "Are you there? Can we talk?" Nathan picked up the phone and set it on his nightstand without responding. He reached for the lamp switch, paused for just a moment, then turned off the light. In the darkness, he could feel tomorrow coming, and for the first time in 3 years, he was ready for it. The process server, a slim woman in a navy blazer, walked through the glass doors of Meridian Property Management precisely at 9:45 a.m. on Tuesday morning. She carried a thick manila envelope and moved with practiced efficiency, scanning the modern office layout until she spotted the desk she wanted. Adrienne Price sat in her corner workspace, perfectly put together as always. Her designer blazer matched her carefully styled hair, and she was leaning forward, engaged in what looked like an important client call. The process server approached without hesitation, waiting at the edge of the desk until Adrienne glanced up with mild irritation. "Just one moment," Adrienne said into her headset, covering the microphone. "I'm on an important call." "Ms. Price, you've been served." The process server placed the envelope directly in front of Adrienne. "This is a civil complaint filed in Fulton County Superior Court." Adrienne's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion as she registered what was happening. Around her, heads turned, conversations paused. The quiet efficiency of the office floor rippled with sudden attention. "I need to call you back," she said into her headset, disconnecting quickly. Her manicured fingers reached for the envelope with visible reluctance. 10 miles away, Nathan sat in his shop's newly expanded office, reviewing the final terms of a maintenance contract with the Highland Hotel Group. The agreement would add 4 downtown properties to their service rotation, a significant expansion that would require careful planning and additional staff. Jerome stood at his shoulder, pointing out specific maintenance schedules they needed to verify. Nathan's phone was face down on his desk. He had turned off the ringer that morning. Back at Meridian Property Management, Adrienne's hands shook slightly as she opened the envelope. The complaint was substantial, nearly 50 pages of detailed documentation. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened as she began to understand what she was holding. Every transfer was listed, every date, every amount. $1,200 repeated 36 times across 3 years, each payment annotated with corresponding email exchanges she had authored. emails discussing treatments that never happened, referencing a facility that never saw her mother, describing the declining health of a woman who had already passed. Gloria Walsh's death certificate was attached as Exhibit A. The date of death stood out in stark black type. Undeniable, unchangeable. Adrienne felt the careful construction of her life begin to crack. She looked up to find several colleagues watching her with undisguised curiosity. The process server was already gone, leaving only the weight of the documents behind. Her first call to Nathan went straight to voicemail. So did the second, and the third, and the fourth. At his shop, Nathan initialed another page of the contract while Jerome updated their scheduling software. They discussed training requirements for the new maintenance protocols, mapped out equipment needs, and planned the next round of hiring. It was detailed, engaging work that required Nathan's full attention. His phone remained silent on his desk, though its screen occasionally lit up with incoming calls. Desperate for some kind of response, Adrienne finally called Paula. Unlike Nathan, Paula answered immediately. "I don't understand what's happening," Adrienne said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "There has to be some mistake. Nathan can't possibly—" "Stop," Paula cut in, her tone calm but absolute. "I'm not the person you need to be talking to. You need a lawyer." "Paula, please. If you could just tell Nathan—" "No," Paula said. "I won't tell him anything. You've had 3 years to tell him things. Now, you need to deal with what's real." The line went dead. By late afternoon, Adrienne had contacted 3 law firms. The first 2, after reviewing the complaint, declined to take her case. The third agreed to meet with her that evening, though their tone suggested they held little hope of mounting an effective defense against such comprehensive documentation. At 6:30 p.m., Nathan walked through his shop doing his final checks. He verified the supply inventory, confirmed the next day's schedule was updated, and made sure all the equipment was properly stored. Jerome had left an hour earlier, heading home to his family. Nathan paused at the door, his hand on the light switch. The shop looked different now. More equipment, more space, more possibility. Everything was moving forward exactly as it should. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and kept walking. The conference room in Carla Bridges' law office was all polished wood and natural light, designed to make important conversations feel civilized. Nathan noticed how the afternoon sun caught the water glasses on the table, how the leather chairs creaked softly when anyone shifted position. Every detail was clear to him, like his senses had sharpened to capture this moment perfectly. Adrienne sat across the table, wearing a cream-colored blazer that probably cost what Nathan used to send her monthly. Her attorney, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, had arranged papers in front of them with practiced precision. Nathan recognized the careful staging of it all. How Adrienne had positioned herself to catch the light just so, how she'd chosen an outfit that made her look both professional and somehow vulnerable. "Thank you for meeting today," Adrienne's attorney began, his tone carefully measured. "We've reviewed the complaint and believe there may be room for an amicable resolution." Carla sat straight-backed beside Nathan, her own files arranged with military precision. She didn't respond immediately, letting the silence stretch just long enough to establish who actually held power in the room. "We're certainly open to discussion," Carla said finally, "though I should note that my client's position is exceptionally well documented." Adrienne leaned forward slightly, her expression composed but showing careful strain, the kind that invited sympathy without appearing too desperate. "Nathan," she said softly, using his name like a key she still believed would unlock something. "I know I handled things badly. I'm prepared to make this right." Her attorney smoothly slid a document across the table. "We've prepared an initial settlement offer that we believe addresses the core financial concerns while acknowledging the complexity of the situation." Carla picked up the document, scanned it briefly, then passed it to Nathan without comment. The number on the page was less than half what he'd paid over 3 years. Additionally, Adrienne continued, her voice catching just slightly. "I want to explain. Things were complicated when Mom died. I was scared and lonely and—" "Let's focus on the documented facts," Carla interrupted, opening her own file. "We have 36 separate wire transfers of $1,200 each, spanning 3 years. We have emails from Mrs. Price specifically referencing treatments at Atlanta Memorial Hospital's oncology wing, a facility that has no record of Gloria Walsh ever being admitted. The transfers could be reasonably characterized as informal support payments," Adrienne's attorney suggested. "Given the length of the marriage and the ongoing connection, we have 17 separate emails," Carla continued, in which Ms. Price described specific medical procedures, named attending physicians, and detailed her mother's supposedly declining condition. All of this correspondence was dated after Gloria Walsh's documented death. Nathan sat perfectly still, watching Adrienne's carefully constructed facade begin to crack around the edges. She'd always been good at managing perception, at creating narratives that served her purposes, but paper didn't care about perception. Documents didn't respond to careful manipulation. "Nathan," Adrienne tried again, her voice soft and intimate, the tone she'd used countless times when she needed something from him. "You have to understand, I never meant for it to go this far. Things just evolved, and I didn't know how to stop, and—" Nathan looked at her directly for the first time since entering the room. His voice was quiet, steady, and absolutely final. "Your mother died 4 months before you told me she was getting worse. I've been paying for a ghost for 3 years. I don't need an explanation. I need restitution." The controlled warmth drained from Adrienne's face. Her attorney leaned close, whispering something urgent in her ear. She stared down at the table, her fingers tracing the edge of a paper she wasn't actually reading. "Perhaps," her attorney said after a moment, "we should discuss a revised settlement framework." "Full restitution," Carla stated firmly. $43,200 plus legal fees. Additionally, we'll need to address the real estate investment portion, given that we can demonstrate direct financial links between my client's transfers and the initial investment capital. Adrienne's shoulders dropped slightly. She kept her eyes fixed on the table as her attorney began discussing payment structures and timelines. An hour later, Nathan walked out of the building into bright afternoon sunlight. He could hear traffic on Peachtree Street, could smell food from the cafe next door. He got into his work van, checked his phone for his next service call address, and pulled into Atlanta traffic without looking back. The notification lit up Nathan's phone screen while he was parked outside a 3-story office building in Sandy Springs. A simple alert from his banking app. Transfer received. He looked at it for a moment, then slipped the phone into his pocket, grabbed his tools, and headed inside to replace a compressor unit that had been giving the third-floor tenants trouble all week. 2 hours later, with the unit humming properly and the paperwork signed, Nathan sat in his van and finally let himself process what the settlement meant. Not just the money, though every dollar had been accounted for, but the finality of it. The last thread connecting him to Adrienne Walsh had been severed with that transfer. The consequences had fallen like dominoes, each one triggering the next. The real estate partnership Adrienne had built, partly with his money, collapsed under the weight of 2 simultaneous legal actions: Nathan's civil recovery claim and Diane Holloway's aggressive pursuit of dissipated marital assets. The investment couldn't survive that kind of scrutiny from 2 directions at once. Word traveled in Atlanta's property management circles. Adrienne's employer, already uneasy about the civil suit, conducted an internal review of her accounts. They found older irregularities, small discrepancies that formed a pattern when viewed together. They let her go quietly, but thoroughly. No references, no severance, just a clean break and a clear message. Brett Holloway's carefully constructed world had crumbled with similar precision. The affair timeline Nathan provided to Diane stripped Brett of any sympathetic position in the divorce proceedings. His settlement options collapsed. The director promotion he'd spent 2 years positioning for went to someone else. The kind of quiet professional consequence that arrived without drama, but landed with real weight. In the end, Brett did what men like him always do when situations turn costly. He left. He ended things with Adrian by text message, a final indignity that reached Nathan through Jerome's network of contacts. Nathan hadn't felt satisfaction at hearing it, just a cool certainty that actions eventually find their level. Now Adrian was back in Birmingham, working a basic leasing job at a property company that didn't ask for references from her last position. The life she'd tried to build on other people's foundations had collapsed under its own hollow weight. Nathan pulled out his phone and called his mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Hey, Mama," he said, settling back in the van's seat. "Nathan, everything all right?" Yeah, it's done. The settlement came through today." He paused, then added, "I need to tell you something. The whole thing, from the beginning." For the next 30 minutes, Nathan laid it all out. Gloria's death, the false medical bills, the fraud, the investigation, everything. His mother listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I've been praying for you these past 3 years," she said finally. "Didn't know exactly what I was praying you through, but I knew it was something heavy." She paused, then added softly, "I always knew you were going to be all right. I just didn't know when you were going to know it too." That evening, Nathan met Jerome, Paula, and her husband Marcus at a steakhouse in Buckhead. They took up a corner booth and ordered too much food. Jerome told ridiculous stories about their early days working out of one van. Paula and Marcus argued playfully about a home renovation project they couldn't agree on. The laughter was real, the food was good, and nobody mentioned Adrienne Walsh once. Later that night, driving home through Atlanta traffic, Nathan thought about how scenes like that dinner, warm, genuine moments with people who actually cared about him, had been absent from his life for 3 years. He'd been too focused on meeting Adrienne's manufactured obligations, too drained by the monthly bleeding of his resources to fully participate in his own life. His phone buzzed, a text from Jerome. "Hey man, you good?" Nathan smiled slightly and pulled into his driveway before responding. "Yeah, I'm good." Because he was. The account was closed. The truth was known. And Nathan Price was finally, completely free. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.